city then goes through an analysis to make sure or check that enough money's been put aside. And they've called people out for shortfalls or bad math. Yes, sir.
Yeah. What role do unions play in the industry, if any? I don't know of the existence of
It's a variety across the industry. There are many union shops, and there are also there are some nuclear facilities that are non-union. During this trip, we did meet with the Blue-Green Alliance, which includes labor unions. We met with the labor component of the Blue-Green Alliance. Because we met with them on the dry storage issue, the impact, the legislation that's about to come out from the federal level. They're supportive of this. There is a jobs component. It takes jobs to make the cask. And there's also this issue doesn't affect jobs at the plants because no plant's likely to shut down due to dry cask storage. So we currently are allied with the labor unions that we've spoken to on this issue. But I've worked prior to joining UCS, I worked at some plants that were union. I also worked at some that weren't. There are labor issues, whether you're union shop or not. I mean, the management and workforce have issues. My experience hasn't been that it's a huge difference. That's not the deciding factor whether there's good relationships or not. We're obviously a fan of unions. It's on our cards, everything, but that's not a requirement for us.
The reason I ask this question is because what better intermediary would you ever have between labor and management? Who knows better than what goes on anywhere, in any workplace, on a day-by-day basis than the workers? If the workers have no representation between themselves and management, it's all going to get lost in translation. They send an emissary to management, and management will just go ahead and do whatever it's been doing. All this is tied up with money, of course. Money is always the thing. And taking shortcuts and all the rest of it could be put to a halt by a union with good integrity. I know I've experienced in my work life, if it weren't for unions, I might be out there panhandling today. Who knows? Maybe it'll be better than what I'm doing.
I agree that unions are a great way for management to engage the workforce and vice versa. They have a great role to play, but I also have experience where the unions weren't there, and you can still have that relationship, a positive relationship. So it does help that, but I've seen positive relationships. I've also seen negative relationships at both. So it's not a guaranteed success, and it's not a guaranteed failure. It really depends on how it's employed.
We've got unions at Palisades that makes it feel better.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm
And
just,
then, Kevin.
you know what the Entergy's liability is in case of an accident at the atomic reactor there at Palisades?
The Price-Anderson Act, as amended, limits the liability for
Price-Anderson?
The Price-Anderson Act, as amended, most recently in 2005 with the Energy Policy Act. I think it's Entergy and all companies, not just Entergy, are required to go out and get, I think it's $300 million of private liability insurance. If an accident, and this is for off-site damages, not damage to the reactor or on-site property. If an accident occurs, damages off-site greater than $300 million, Price-Anderson invokes a secondary pool that invoices all other plant owners. I think it's up to $10 million a year for 10 years. Based on the number of reactors and the number of years, that's about $11 billion. I can't do the math in my head, but it's approximately $11 billion. If the accident occurs, damages above that, the Act calls for Congress to establish who pays next. The good news about Price-Anderson is that if there is an accident that invokes that layers, you don't have to get a lawyer sued to show that there was fault. All you have to really show is there were damages as a result of the accident. So it simplifies getting the money or getting what's needed. So we like that benefit because it shortens the time between injury and remedy.
So is Energy up to date on their payments to the insurance company? Is there a way to find out about that?
Yeah, those are also, I've seen those in the NRC's website as well.
NRC?
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission at www.nrc.gov. Periodically, the companies send in that proof of insurance. It's not called that, but it basically says it's from this insurer, we have this amount. So I assume they are. I have no reason to doubt that they are, as the other companies. I think that's covered, or public, what is covered notice. Kevin? Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, I was remiss in not announcing the refreshments, but I see a lot of people found them already. Thanks to Kathy Roper for making cookies, and Sandy Malone for bringing beverages. And we also have handouts, we have paraphernalia for sale over here, we got books on display, so please check out the tables. And, you know, there's so many things to respond to. We could have an entire evening session like this just on the dry cask storage issue in Palisades. I mean, we have Mary Sinclair, founder of Don't Waste Michigan, and the Attorney General of the state of Michigan challenged parking that high-level waste 150 yards from the water in 1992, 1993 on gas and 3-foot thick concrete pad that is anchored to nothing underneath, 55 feet of loose sand. And it's not us saying this, it's Dr. Ross Landsman, who is the NRC's Midwest Regional Dry Cask Storage Inspector, who warned 20 years ago that if you have a bad enough earthquake at that location, the sand could part, the lake could flow in, and those dry casks could be in the bottom of Lake Michigan. And one possibility is there's enough fissile material in that waste that if water gets in there, you could have a chain reaction start in there. And again, it's not us saying this, it's NRC with 65 requests for additional information to the owner of that cask design. What happens if water gets in there? What happens if there's barge shipments to away from reactor centralized interim storage and one of those barges goes down? So yeah, we could have a lot more discussions, I guess we need to, about these issues. But the question I want to ask is the September 25th, 2011 incident, which garnered an NRC loss of 50% of the power
So you
controller,
go and turn this thing on.
electrician nearly electrocuted.
This thing.
Some of the statements made by Anthony Vitale at the
I can
session
use this
where
to
Energy wanted to get that yellow lowered to a white, but it didn't happen. We think it should have been red. You know, the pressurizers yearly went solid, filled with water from Fukishima. The steam generators yearly went solid. What worst case scenarios could have unfolded? I mean, I read the full after report by NRC. I don't know if it was an augmented inspection team, but it was thick. And 24 systems went out of control. Anthony Vitale said, number one, he could have killed somebody that day. He meant the electrician who almost got electrocuted. Number two, I think it was him or another executive from Energy said, when they saw the face of the shift manager coming off the floor after that was all said and done, hours later, it took them hours to get the plant back under control. He would never let that happen again. But we're not really confident that things are all that much better these days. So that's kind of the gist. What could have happened? How serious was that?
Well,
And finally, how was it that less than a year later, or about a year later, given the August 2012 control rod drive mechanism housing that we talked about, how is it that NRC could restore Palisades from 2 levels of degraded safety all the way to the top in one fell swoop?
I'll answer it, and I'll be glad to ask you to correct or supplement as wish. We looked at that and we agreed with the yellow finding. We thought that was the right classification for the event they had. There were some events where perhaps the event should have been avoided in the first place if some measures had been taken to better manage that work activity, that maintenance activity. There were some problems later when the event occurred. The event resulted in plant conditions that were not anticipated, that weren't fully expected. There were some, as you pointed out, there were some problems in how that was dealt with. I think that those factors led to the yellow classification by the NRC. As I read their special inspection report and their enforcement action, I tended to agree that that was the right action, or the right classification level. I heard the company's arguments that it should have been lesser. I've seen others that arguments that it should have been higher, but I think that was the right level for what happened, or what didn't happen, whatever, however you want to characterize it. The concern I drew from that, and similar events around the same time frame within a year or two of the Millstone plant losing control of power during a test and Pilgrim losing control of the reactor during a startup, is that these were activities that are in some cases fairly routine, the testing and the startup, and somewhat non-routine, the event that occurred at Palisades, and all of them entailed operators doing not as well as anybody would have liked, or at least we would have liked. And I think it shows that there's a training issue when fairly routine or somewhat non-routine activities are challenged. operators make mistakes or procedure guidance isn't adequate. That harkens back to the sphere accidents I mentioned earlier, that with even less training on those events, why do we think the operators are going to perform even better? I have concerns that given their problems dealing with more routine activities, that their performance on even more stressful, less practiced activities won't be any better. But I'm glad to entertain if there's any.
Well, we do train on beyond design basis events, and that's why we had that day, was a beyond design basis event. You're right, we approached solid plan conditions. We didn't go to solid plan conditions, and the operators maintained, they stayed within their procedures, they used the training that we provided them, and they mitigated the event. And we lost 1 out of 2 DC direct current buses. We got 2 of them, right? We got this defense and depth thing. So we lost power to half of the control room, but we have redundant instrumentation to tell us where the rest of the plant was. So that's why I don't believe it was higher in yellow, because we didn't lose the safety function. The plant was not in an unsafe condition. We were able to mitigate that accident, put things under control, and it safely shut down. We went from power operations down to mode 3, and then we continued. Once we realized what had happened, we cooled the plant down very successfully. The operators didn't have any issues maneuvering the plant because they were well trained to do so.
If I remember correctly, it was less than 10 minutes ago it was out. Pressurizer and the steam generator, so it was very, very narrow miss.
Okay, yeah, we have a challenge. Like I said, it was a beyond design basis event, but like I said, we routinely train our people to deal with that. They recognize that. They recognize that they have procedures that they needed to get into, and they didn't go solid. And we had, it doesn't say we haven't gone solid, would have a complicated event, certainly. But that doesn't mean we would have broke the plant. Got things called relief valves that would have accommodated that, we would have managed it.
Okay. Any other questions?
What about the restoration safety status? Going through
Oh.
2 rungs down all the way to top notch?
Thank you.
Yes, please.
The reason that occurred was the NRC didn't sanction the leak in August of 2012. So, given that they weren't too concerned about that, we felt the NRC showed a complete lack of concern over that. That leak, pressure boundary leakage, was the primary factor for the Davis-Bessey near miss. The NRC claimed to have learned from that to take steps to never allow that to happen again. They haven't learned as much as they need to learn from that. Had they properly sanctioned the company, either in fines or in colors, bring out the right crayons, then that would have been greater than green. Probably would have been a white. I'm not suggesting that should have been a yellow or red, but that would have delayed Palisades moving as far as it did, as quickly as it did. So our beef is with the NRC for not properly assessing the second event. Once they've made that mistake, everything else they did was in accordance with the reactor oversight process. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for your talk tonight and your response to the questions. I feel like it was very balanced, and so I really, I appreciate it.
Well, appreciate that. On that note, one of the things that UCS believes is that we're not doing a good enough job getting out to communities or communicating with our members, which we have tens of thousands around the country, and others that we work with. So that's why we're trying to make more trips like this. The other thing we're thinking of doing is webinars or some kind of Skype or something like that. If you have any suggestions on what would work best for you or what we could try, because we honestly are trying to do a better job in this area. We don't have infinite resources, but we're trying to figure out how to do this better. So any and all suggestions on how to do this or what we could do or what frequency, right now, anytime would be a good idea. Now is a particularly good time for us to hear that. So if you have any of that, get in touch with UCS and pass that along, because we are trying to do better, and any guidance or suggestions how to help do that would greatly be appreciated. YouTube? We are trying to do more of that. We've done some. I don't know if we're not, obviously not doing as well because you don't know that, but we are trying to do a better job of that, so we'll expand that. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I noticed the man from the NRC is here, and I think there are some other people. And I
Just
really
me from the actual.
appreciate that, and he's taking lots of notes, which
I will
is
see.
very happy.
Well,
But I think it would be really wonderful if we could hear you say what you did, which I have a tendency to believe, and then hear him. Because 2 weeks ago, we were at a meeting, and of course, I didn't believe them, but if I had believed them, I would have left you saying, what?
What-
And why can't you guys have a conversation? I'm sure he has something to say. So in the future, I mean now, but I think that would be a good possibility for,
I don't know what this event, but in the past we have invited, at this one, I don't believe we invited the NRC. And I don't want to put Jack on the spot. If you're welcome to speak.
Well, first, and I do like to talk. I think these events are great. I come take notes because I think it adds value, and I think we share the same goal in making sure the plants operate safely. So that's a good idea. I mean, I wasn't invited, but I came because I live in the area, and it's a good opportunity to.
well, I have to say, I have my estimation of the NRC is improved because you're here.
Well, thanks for saying that.
But the two stories that I get are so completely different that
Well,
we need a happy medium or.
Right. Well, I think we ought to set something. I'll talk with Dave after to set something up, and I'm sure we can arrange it. But I don't think we're complete. Like you heard that there's alignment a lot. There's some pieces that we don't agree with, and those we could probably highlight. Here's what I think where we are on the August 2011 week. Here's where I think we are on September 25th. I think on that issue, we are pretty much. So I think we should try to set something up. I don't want to speak for my bosses, but I'm sure, and I've talked to Mr. Lockbaum before on several occasions, so we could probably set something up and invite folks out and have it. I'm not sure if you'd like an Auckland group or something, but maybe we could set something up to provide feedback to the community. So I like that.
We also need to point out that the NRC, when the NRC holds public meetings, they've often invited you or me to be at the table or provide our input. The NRC's changed its policy years ago to allow the public to speak at all meetings, often at the table, if not at least like we've done here before the meeting ends. And that takes resources. The NRC's also webcast all of its commission meetings and many more of its other meetings. That's some of the things we're talking about. We're behind the NRC. We need to do more outreach like it's doing. I give a plug for his Jack boss. Chuck Casto is now the regional administrator, Region 3. I worked with Chuck at the Browns Ferry plant in the 80s. Chuck is one of the people around that I have the most respect for. He's an amazing person for many. He was the NRC's team leader for Japan, but he's also done right even before Japan. He did a great job there, but he's done a lot before that. So I have a lot of respect for Chuck. Please pass that along to Chuck. I've said it to his face before, but the more times you hear it, you might believe it someday. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. They have more at stake. The Quanti plant is closing down next month. There's 650 workers that are likely to lose their jobs pretty soon. In our discussions with the Blue-Green Alliance earlier this week, one of the things that came out of that is I'm going to talk to the Nuclear Energy Institute when I get back to DC about the industry creating some kind of a plan for when a plant does shut down prematurely or unexpectedly to lessen the workforce, lessen the impact on the workforce, come up with training jobs, some kind of ability to get the word out so they can go else. That happens, but right now it's more ad hoc on an individual basis. Try to come up with some plans in place across the industry and also at individual plants. Because I don't know when a plant's going to shut down, but the plants aren't immortal. That shutdown will occur someday. I've also had discussions with the county and the city level in many states about them planning for that as well. Come up with like a 5-year plan. If that plant were to shut down, here's how we're going to lessen the tax changes, the job changes. They want to keep as many jobs in those communities. there's a lot of workers that would just as soon stay in this community. So we've had talks with county executives and city executives, and we're going to talk to the industry about better preparing for that day. And they have a plan in place for decommissioning.